like if you freeze frame any picture of a basketball guy playing, I took a picture of a screenshot of Kawhi Leonard driving the other day. I mean, the angles are crazy. Crazy. If I put that, I've used the TVs a lot this year than I ever have. If I put the TVs up of that, hey guys, we're doing no rep set for this. And we're doing a side leaning landmine side lunge for this. Look at your angle. Look at your ankle here. Like, that's why we're doing it.
That was Matt Aldred, and you're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Lila Exogen Wearable Resistance. Exogen is used by coaches such as Randy Huntington and Chris Corfist and is an incredible tool in overloading the angular, momentum, and speed aspect of human movement. You can get 25% off of Exogen sleeves by heading to lilateam.com and using the code JustFly25. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, and thanks for tuning in. This week's guest is Matt Aldred. Matt is the head strength and conditioning coach for basketball at the University of Michigan. Matt has international experience and a diverse background in sports, as well as methods he has worked with through his previous stops in the NCAA and his career. On the show today, Matt talks about his athlete-centered training process, and he highlights the spectrum of, on one end, more simple, muscular strength and tension-oriented methods, and on the other, athletic, chaotic, variable, multiplanar methods, how he cycles between those and how it fits the individual based on where they are in their athletic process. He also talks about basketball game demands, athlete autonomy, wearable resistance training, this and much more. I really enjoyed this conversation. Let's get to 462 with Matt Aldred. Matt, it's awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I'm glad we can make this happen.
Okay, thanks for having me.
So I'm really interested, and we even talked about this briefly before we pushed record, but I'm really interested in not only the modalities and the sets and reps, but what led the coach to the view they have in terms of background, your own background and mentors and coaching. And I know you started in soccer or football, I guess the correct term of it all. But in terms of a lot of people who get into strength and conditioning, at least over here in the West, started in a lot of times it's American football or things like that. And it's a much more, to my understanding, a much more like heavier weights, barbell oriented start. Whereas I'd be curious what the general consensus is over there. Like, how are you trained from a physical preparation perspective in soccer? And how was your early approach into the world of physical preparation, strength and conditioning shaped by being a soccer player?
Yeah. So essentially we, at my secondary school, my high school, we didn't have a strength coach. But it was something that I was always interested in from a very young age, was keeping fit and being healthy and almost allowing my peers to listen to my ramblings, and they'd ask me advice on training stuff. So from a very young age, I felt like I was sharing information with my peers and my friends. So I remember, when I was 16, I would go to a gym and just write my own program because I didn't have a traditional strength coach like what the high school athletes do here. And, it's almost a shock when an athlete comes to me in their first year and they've done no training. You're like, what? Like, because everyone has a high school strength coach. Back in England, we didn't. And then when I went to university, that's when we started really lifting. It was twice a week. But it was a lot of the Olympic lifts that I really wasn't proficient at. Some players just got it straight away. So I was sucked at it. And it was really agitating for me because I didn't feel like I was improving. And I actually felt like I was almost put myself more at risk. So I kind of resented the strength coach for that. And then, my young professional years, I was doing a lot of TRX stuff, a lot of kettlebell stuff, a lot of Viper stuff, a lot of body weight stuff. Because, for soccer, for football, as it were, like, you don't want to be too heavy. And so I was always aware of like my body composition and being lean, but being strong. So that was always my mindset. Like, can I be really strong with body weight, chin ups, pull ups, even doing boxing, body weight, core stuff. And so that kind of transitioned when I came out to the States to play 2 years I got my master's degree from West Florida when we had another strength coach again. Really good guy. He actually was one of the main reasons I really wanted to be a strength coach. His job just looked so fun. He just I used to see him eating, training, or just like listening to music. He had the best job ever. And he was awesome. He's a baseball guy that trained us. But again, it was very Olympic lifting based. And I struggled with it, really resented. A lot of the American guys were just like, easy. And I was like on the lightest rack. And I was like, I suck at this, but I'm like one of the better players. Like, there's a disconnect here. Like, what's going on? And so I really tried to be coached, and my body just didn't seem to bend that way. And so that was that. And when I became a professional, I went back to kind of the body weight stuff. And I was a personal trainer for a couple of years. So again, I used to always gravitate towards the more, let's say, functional area of our gym back in England, away from the dumbbells and barbells. That was just kind of where the meatheads were. And I was more like, hey, let's do some functional stuff. Like, you're a regular PT client, you're your average Joe. I want you to move better, but like, we can still do stuff that's really going to tax you. Because a lot of clients just want to sweat and feel like they've worked out. And then when I came out to the States, that's kind of the mindset I had when I was a grad assistant. I had tennis, I had lacrosse, I had men's and women's soccer, men's and women's tennis. And so a lot of those sports, lacrosse was in my second year, but a lot of those sports are very movement based, right? Soccer and tennis, you don't see a lot of jack tennis players. You don't see a lot of jack football players. And so my training brain kind of went towards that, like, okay, we need to get stronger, but can we make it more single leg strength, like single leg squats from box, lunges, frontal plane movements, TRX, and all that kind of stuff. It was really only when I watched my head strength coach, who was really, really good with ice hockey, that he did a lot of loading with those guys, more traditional loading. And it was the first time I wasn't playing soccer professionally. So I was like, I want to get more involved in the resistance training. I want to kind of train a bit harder myself. And I did like the 5-3-1 method. So I went straight in there. That I saw the benefit of it paired with the other stuff. So the traditional and the functional stuff. And so, yeah, and then I got to work for a really, really impressive and incredible strength coach at Florida, Preston Green, who was very much Poliquin principles. So again, that's when I was like, whoa, like GPP, tempo, fat grips, like different ranges of motion. And I got to my heaviest weight I've ever been. Didn't necessarily feel healthy, but I felt big and strong. And then I got to be my own kind of strength coach at Furman for 6 years. And I really found a nice balance. Like, I love to run. This was just inherent in me as a soccer player. And I like to still maintain a certain size. So I've probably been like 175 for the last 5 years, knowing exactly what I like and how I want to train. But I think me as a coach is kind of a mixture between, yes, you need to be strong. And for certain positions, that's required more. If you come in as a frail freshman at 160 and you're 6'5", we need to add some mass. If you come in at 250 and you're 6'5", 6'6", okay, we might need to lean out. Depending on your position, depending on your goal, depending on the need. So that really dictates my programming and whether it's more traditional or functional. But I do always have a mind to, like, the game is so intense and it's so movement based. We have to replicate that in the weight room. We can't just be weight room warriors, because we've all had that athlete that's super strong and looks amazing. And I'm looking at the opposition team in a warm up going, who is he? That's a bit. And then they don't play. Like, the skill will always dictate if you play. And then can we add to that as a player? Like, if they're really skilled, like, okay, now let's build the physical capacities we need for that.
Yeah. I like one thing. I just been thinking about this lately, and you mentioned like writing your own program when you're younger. And I know you've written a lot about autonomy too. And I just think this is something that I feel is so valuable in the sense that, like, there's, and I think on one hand, this is a really good thing, is that every high school or most high schools have a strength coach. That is very needed, because if every kid just wrote their own program, or even almost even worse in some respects, I almost think it's even worse if the sport coach writes the program than the kid sometimes, because those are some of the most heinous strength programs you've ever seen.
For sure.
I know for me personally, like, those of us who are interested, or who are so, like, who love it, like, who live and breathe like movement and strength and evolving our bodies into their highest potential, that early exploration is critical. And as I've talked to so many coaches, that's almost always something that is something they did when they were younger. And I think about, well, what if we all just had a coach who told us everything we had to do? And I was even to the point where, like, I had done so much work trying to figure it out from basically age 12 on up, that when I finally had my first, like, strength coach experience, which was our high school wrestling coach, and to his credit, I think the program he put out, he just took the Husker Power, I think it was a college Husker Power football program, and had us high schoolers doing it. It's like 4 days a week of pretty substantial barbell-based lifting. And I had the intuition at that point, finally at age 17, 18, from all the years before, that I was like, I could handle 2 days a week of this. So basically 2 days I went hard, and 2 days I just totally sandbagged it. And the funny thing is to your point, though, with the skill, our star player at this high school, he was all-conference first team, I think, player of the year in soccer. You mentioned, I found it funny, you mentioned like football players are weak, but if that phrase, in the absence of soccer, right, like, it's like, no, it's soccer players, like, always the distinction, right? But he was first team, like, player of the year soccer, first team all conference basketball. And all he cared about was bench press, and everything else, he would just like squats. He would just put like 45s on the bar and just quarter squat when the strength coach wasn't looking, didn't care. And it's just funny to look at like, wow, the best player, most skilled, and this guy too is 5'9", could dunk. Like, I mean, super athletic, and just wasn't interested in. I mean, he probably went to college and got more serious about it, like a lot of kids do. I think at some point, I think you have to at least hit some level of intensity for sure. But it was interesting to always notice that. And I'm kind of going off a tangent, but I did want to touch on what you meant with the skill is king type piece of it all. And yeah, just I think cultivating that intuition is a really critical piece. I was going to say too, if I had to pick one group that is probably not candidates for Olympic lifting, it would be European soccer players.
I'm there. That's me.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. But I mean, I grew up with like, I didn't even have a coach teaching me. I was like, I think I should do this like sophomore year, and just trying to teach it myself, because it's the culture here, right? Like, but it's just interesting. And I was just thinking too, how you went 5-3-1. Like what a way to go if you haven't been lifting. Let's just go all in and just totally go for it, right?
It must have been like a T Nation, because I was asking my head strength coach, like, he's very good with the traditional stuff, and his like I say, his program with ice hockey was so in depth, and I was loving it. They were the only Division I school, Alabama Huntsville, and they were awesome. They were a great team to train. I loved assisting them. And I was like, if I want to do this, like I know there's gaps in my programming from just doing the more functional stuff. Like I'm not very proficient with Olympic lifting, with the traditional lifting. So I was like, okay, I was intrigued by it. I had never done it really. So I was like, well, if he can help me out with it and I can see improvements, and obviously the 5-3-1, the one rep is supposed to be like, you might be able to get 3 to 5 reps. And I remember getting like 12 to 15. And he was like, yeah, I think you need to change your estimates for the next round. I was like, yeah, I probably do. Because it wasn't quite, there was a disconnect, but you learn by doing it, right? But it's funny you talk about the correlation with soccer athlete and football athlete. I'll stick to soccer so we can be very clear for the American audience.
Yeah, just to catch no phrases, like sound bites. It's like, wait, Matt said, what about football players?
No doubt. But it's funny because when I was at Alabama Huntsville, I was training the soccer team, and certain positions require certain things, even with soccer. And I think there's such a nuance now. So like center backs, big defenders, like they want to be big. They want to do the bench press. They want to do the curls. Well, wingers, they're going to be the more fascial based elastic athletes that really don't want to do that. And I've seen quotes from Premiership players saying, I don't lift weights. Lifting weights hurts my performance. And I'm like, it's probably not good for the young. You're a role model, right? So it's probably not good. Like you're a professional. You do some form of activation before you practice. That does help you. There's a certain level of strength you need to be able to sprint repeatedly and to play 50 games a season in the Premiership. So like you are doing something with your medical team. But I think it's just finding that balance as an athlete. And I'm fortunate now to work in basketball where lean mass is really important, but also like body fat percentage. And so they can kind of work in correlation, right? One goes up, one can go down. So I think body composition is really important here. But again, knowing the athlete, knowing their background, some guys are super strong already. So really it is more of the fascial based stuff with them. I kind of have it fascial hybrid and then muscle based athletes. And if you think about it on that continuum, if you're a really muscle based athlete and really driven that way, like some bigs in the NBA, then you probably need to train the other end of the spectrum. If you're an outlier in the middle, like LeBron is an outlier, all these guys are like Jokic is probably an outlier. Like, okay, let's ignore them because they are very, very special and unique. Let's look at more someone here and how we can train. But to your point about intuition, the longer I've done this, the more I really lean into an athlete's intuition. You talk about that quarterback. There was probably something to that he didn't want to go super heavy with his legs because he knew he had a game coming up and he didn't want to feel like he was weighed down by that. So there is a real intuition here. And I always tell our athletes, I'll probably be in the driver's seat to start, but I want you to be in that driver's seat and you need to tell me how you're feeling out on the court. If you feel like you're too slow, you feel like you're getting stronger or heavier, and like the force plates will give us that information as we go through. But I want you to tell me. I'm never going to experience what you experience. Like I played soccer. Like you have to tell me how you feel for me not to listen to that as arrogance. And I want the best for you, which is why I'm in this job, is to help you achieve your goals. And it's so fulfilling to me to have players that are going to be in the NBA next year and you have a small percentage of help for that. Like, man, that's just the best feeling ever, right? To coach is to help people, is to teach. So I have to hear from you how the program's going and what you like to do as well. What do you not like to do? What do you like to do? I even had an conversation with an athlete the other day. I said, social media, let's use it. If you see stuff you like, send it to me. I'd rather see it and be able to do it with you and help you. than not see it and you do it by yourself, or just think, well, we're not doing anything of this, and this guy trains NBA players and Matt never does this. Like, I'd love to see it, man. And I'll send you stuff. And I just think that helps Bayern when they do come in here and we have a merge of the two.
Yeah. It reminds me of Tony Holler's X Factor Day, because I believe Tony has said at some point, for people who aren't familiar with the Feed the Cat system, the X Factor Day is basically a big like plyometric type day. But I believe Tony has said that's a day where if an athlete's like, oh, I saw this exercise on social media, it's like they'll throw that in there. So it's like a day where the athletes get a chance to mix something like that in. It is interesting because we certainly live in a day and age where athletes are inundated with so many things. And I think about like what Bush Nextator talks about, like the intense days are, and I think a lot of this relates to like, it's like a dial with degrees of freedom or movement options. Like heavy lifting, the dial is turned, or isometrics, there's no movement options or very little. And sport, there's a lot of movement options, a very wide variety. And so I actually, I'm like mixed up where I'm going, but because as soon as I talked about that, I was like, all right, well, so I was talking about Tony and the autonomy. What I was going to mention is Kevin Mulcahy has talked about athletes who grew up on play, where everything is play. They tend to be the ones that don't enjoy that dial being closed down that much. There's something in their system that just doesn't like not having options. And it's very interesting to think, because I even like a LeBron, it's funny, like a LeBron James, you watch him and he still does a lot of lifting with a lot of options. There's a lot of options, and he seems to prefer things like balancy that still have that movement flexibility in there.
Yeah.
Obviously someone who has those very extreme physical gifts right off the bat. So let's talk a little bit about that dial of movement options. So you mentioned you have different athletes, and we don't have to get into the individualization so much yet, because I think it's a really big thing to unpack. But how do you approach that spectrum of, okay, on one end we have the heavier weights, we have the more heavy hitting barbell, dumbbell, isometric, and then the other end we have very, like you said, fascial functional training. A lot of people would call it throughout history's time, just things that have more options to them, more movement quality to them. How do you go about that in a session? And I'm sure it's different for athlete. And then maybe talk a little bit about how that might change over the course of a year.
Yeah, I think in general, when I first see an athlete, it's definitely more on that open dial movement based, because I don't do a lot. I used to do a lot of like filming of exercises to test them, and we'd go for a testing battery on the table downstairs with athletic trainer, but I never really kind of went back to it at like the end of the summer, because we always had different things to do. So I was like, well, I'm testing and not retesting. So I was like, okay, let's just make it super simple. Let's film an overhead squat and a single leg squat to the bench. That's my qualitative assessment. Obviously, I've got the force plates, but when they first come in, a lot of it is movement based, so I can see their range of motion. So a hand assisted RDL, that shows me your hamstrings, hips. A front foot elevated lunge, that shows me knees, hips, and ankles. And ankles especially is really important. Their single leg squat to bench, that shows me everything. Overhead squat shows me everything, front and side. So I really kind of keep the dial open with that GPP phase, working tempo so we can at least expose that tissue to full range of motion load. Because I don't know fully how much training they've had. I've had transfers come in and they can't do a forward lunge with the knees touching the floor. And I'm like, whoa, you are tight, you are stiff. So I don't need to assume he can do all that. So the first phase will be that. I've got an athlete coming in today, it will be GPP. It's very much open chain. And then once I feel we've got to a solid base, we kind of work towards the primary lift. So exercise progression wise, we'll work towards a bench press. We'll work towards a variation of a squat, variation of a deadlift. Deadlift for me would be trap bar deadlift. If it's raised, if you're above 6'6", like we're going to have to raise it. But I do think the lower body needs that loading, especially for the spine. And then squatting is a safety bar, probably a riff, elevated lunge, or split squat. So we're building towards those. And in general, like even I know one of the questions later is about kind of the yearly cycle, but A series for me is kind of very like, this is the technique I want you to use. This is the tempo. We're doing full loading here. The main emphasis is the load. And then the B series for me is about variability. All right. Can we improve that movement library? Can we tolerate variability more? So if we're doing a side lunge, I don't really care if it's really close to you or really far away. If it's in that B series, I'll go back a point. I'll either say it's a side lunge with range of motion, or it's a side lunge reactive. If it's a range of motion side lunge, wide, press the dumbbells to the leg. If it's reactive, hey man, you do whatever you need. Short, like just keep it like on a clock face, like 2 to 4. Let's keep it kind of frontal transverse plane. I don't need 1 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Keep it on the side, because you'll find out later on in the week, we'll probably do a sagittal movement or transverse where it'll be on that different clock face area. But that to me is very much like letting the kind of shackles off. Hey man, like do what you need to do. And athletes will do it really quick, or they have a disconnect between their arms and their legs. Like just replicate a step back long, a step back 3, a pull up 2. I really like that. And you'll see with athletes that they really enjoy that. And okay, this is cool. I haven't really done this before. Great. That's what this weight room should be. It should be giving you new stimulus so that we are training different qualities you've not trained before, so that we see an impact on the core. That's it. Your A series is for load, and we'll try and track that over the year, and we'll try and make sure we hit a traditional 1RM. So I'll try and track their 1RM every 10 to 15 days in season, just so I can see like how we're fatiguing. If we can keep hitting 4 or 5 on a trap bar, that to me over 5 months gives me a good estimate of like we're staying max strength strong, right? And I don't, and it might be raised one day, it might be lower depending on our travel schedule. But yeah, turning the dial there I think is really important. There are certain exercises like a chin up. Okay, like we're probably going to want to go full range of motion. I want you to hold at the top and with tempo down. All right. But if we're doing a horizontal row, man, I can be elbow wide. I can be really quick reps. I can hold at the top. I can do a split stance with an anchor on a Kaiser, pull down. Like we can make that horizontal row whatever we want to do. And so just depending on the time of year, if an athlete's really on the muscle side of it and he's trained for multiple years and I see he moves well, boom, I'll probably hit a lot of that earlier for them. Because again, it's a new stimulus. Man, this is why I'm training you this way. Coach, that makes sense. Great. If it's someone that's weak, right, and very frail, we probably need the more traditional loading. And it's obviously a process and a system that it keeps being refined. Sure. Athletes show me new things all the time. Have an incoming athlete, 6'9", 250, who previous strength coach just says like he was strong enough, so I never really did strength-based movements with him. Wow. So I'm like, is he fascial-based all year round? Well, I need to figure that out. So that's what we're kind of doing right now to see. And I still think there's some meat on the bone with his strength. So we're going to pursue traditional methods and then open the dial up for that kind of more fascial-based functional stuff in the B series, really.
Sure. So would you say amongst your team, and that's just the cool thing is how everyone's different, but just from a percentage, if you had like buckets, like how many guys are in more of the like, hey, we're going to do a lot more functional or fascial, whatever you want to use for that term there, throughout the year, like they're more of that versus people, hey, you got to put on muscle. We need more of that, and that's going to be more of the year. And then how many people are more of that hybrid in the middle? If you had to give just a general breakdown, I'm curious where that's landing. Is it?
Really hard to do,
it's just all over the place.
Team this year.
Oh yeah, NIL era, of course.
Yeah, NIL.
Right,
so I would say generally my incoming 5 men will be more on that fascial side. Like your superpower is your max strength. Well, let's hit it because I know that's what you feel strong at in here. But I want to expose you to so many different levels and amplitude of hops, frontal plane movements, transverse plane. Use the Viper, use the anchor, use the Kaiser, use any different kind of modality I can to get you moving better. Because generally as a big man, you'll be strong, but where you can really improve is your footwork and your ability to guard multiple positions. So they're like, yes, NBA, perfect. So we're going to do a lot of that for you in the summer. So generally for my 5 men, that'll be a high percentage is doing the more fascial-based stuff. And then for my point guards, it's really probably a hybrid of the two, because I do think at the Big Ten, you need to be very physical. Some guys coming in, and obviously we have some guys come in that haven't done anything for 4 to 6 weeks. So it's like they need to put back on that muscle mass pretty quick, that lean mass, to be that playing weight they want. So that'll probably be the first half of the summer, more traditional. And then the second half, I always call it like, we'll get to the sexy stuff because they want to do the speed stuff. Sure. They want to do the medicine ball Euro. We'll get to that. But I need to tick off certain qualities in my head, hamstring strength, erector strength. Like I need to tick off all the VMO, like tick off stuff in my head to be like, yes, you can now do the sexy stuff. So that'll be and then the wings is really the hybrid group as well. But honestly, the longer they train with me, the more I think we go towards the more sport specific stuff sooner. Because again, like I know your strength. I know I need to hit this quality every 2 weeks in your programming. Last year we have, let's say 13 scholarship players. I think I had 10 different programs. 2 of my wings would be on the same program. We had a return to play, but for the most part, it's individual sessions on the racks. I explain it to them in that warm-up period, and then they're all doing very different things. Going back to kind of my background, I think that's what makes it a bit unique is I'm always curious. And I love, I don't think that we put the athlete in the box. Like, no, man, like whatever you are, I'll program towards that. And I think that sounds really simple and yeah, coach, I get it. That makes a lot of sense. But doing it just takes a lot more work. You're programming every week to kind of keep ahead of things. But to me, that's the best thing we can do with these athletes, especially basketball athletes, which are so unique and the sport is so unique. Every sport would say that, but you got to make it about them, man. You got to make it. And they might be here for 10 months. So can we really get them ready to compete in 5 months, ready to play hard? Let's say 4 months, because you've got preseason, which is a bear, right? And then in season, can we maintain those qualities? Can we improve them? Yes, I mentioned the 1RMs, but in season loading is like, I got to keep you strong because we've got a game in 3 days and we're leaving in 2 days. And the games are so stressful. Last thing I'm going to do is add jumps to you. Last thing I'm going to do is add strain to your, I'm going to probably stretch you more. We're going to do the lift really intense for 20 minutes. I'll stretch you on the road night before a game. I'll do the fascial abrasion tool, which we mentioned previously before we got on recording. Like, I want to make you feel good for these games, because the game itself will give you all of those outputs you need, those max speed. I don't need to sprint you. I need to just keep you max strength strong in multiple planes of motion, keep your shoulders healthy, and make sure your body composition is good. Make sure you're not getting fat in season because we eat a lot of food.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Gym Studio. Gym Studio is a frictionless gym and studio management software. It can effortlessly manage memberships, schedule classes, track attendance, and even automate billing. To check out what Gym Studio can do for you, head to gymstudio.com and set up your free 14-day trial in less than 5 minutes. I think I like how you mentioned just like, tuning someone up for the game and then the stimulus that game offers being so potent. I think we forget about that a lot. Even there was a workout I did the other day, just on my own, that reminded me of back, and you mentioned you're 175 pounds. That's when I'm 6'1", 180, and I was 175, 180 when I was competing in college, which is way too much for a high jumper. That high jumper should weigh like 155. So I threw javelin. I don't know. It's kind of, I kind of have thick like wrists, and it was kind of difficult to get a little bit lower. But I think about, like, I was very strong pound for pound in the weight room in my lifts without lifting a lot, just by doing really good track workouts, really good quality plyometrics, feeling good, being explosive and competitive. And sometimes, even now, age 41, I'll do a workout that blends a lot of those qualities. Maybe it's a partial function of boredom and creativity, but like trying to get really explosive modalities to feel like a basketball game. Like, for example, this one I didn't have a lot of time. Like, I kind of had to, we were going to a family function, and I was like, all right, I got to get a neural day in. And so the workout was, I have like a hill that's like maybe a 2 or 3 degree grade next to my house. It's pretty long. So it was actually over speed strides. The circuit went like this. Or actually, it was hill up a hill that's about 10 degree grade, 15 degree, either medicine ball or chasing a tennis ball. So that was like reactive, and did like 3 reps, a little bit of heart rate. And then it was a depth jump, like a low, like I don't do nearly the height. If I did the heights I used to do, it would probably not end necessarily well. But I like more exploring the lower heights now, like variability. And I want to talk with you more about that too, the variability and how that, like the repetition without repetition. I tend to do my depth jumps like that now, because if I do 3 sets of 10 and they're all the same, my tissues get loaded the exact same way. It's actually not so good, especially because I'm not playing basketball anymore. So I'll do the rep without rep, depth jump with different bar heights and all that stuff. A lot lower intensity than like the max I used to do. And then I went do the overspeed strides. Like I do 2, like an easy one, like an easy fly 10, and then one that just feels good. These aren't like, theirs are not like just maximal competitive, but just like to get stimulus in. And then I would do line hops for 20 seconds, like both legs as fast as possible. So the total stimulus felt a little bit, minus change of direction. There was a little bit of that team sport stim, but it also had some really stimulating and engaging things in there. And after that workout, and then the next day, I was feeling it, a little soreness, but a lot of it, I was feeling it in a way that reminded me of how strong my body could get without, and if I was to go lift weights a couple of days after that, I would be stronger. Like my iso pushes would register higher, especially the iso pushes, like the specific range stuff, just because that, as a team sport athlete, like that is so needed. And so I like, you saying that, like, let's get you as ready as possible to be high output in the game, and that game is going to deliver I just don't hear that often. Usually it's like, it's all about all the modalities, and it's good. Obviously, it's a great discussion, all the modalities surrounding, the strength modalities surrounding, but that idea of the game is a strength stimulus, let's make that really good and let's support that really well. And then your lifts will probably be great too. I think that's a really important way of putting it.
Yeah, and even in the summer, like I have 4 hours with them, coach said 4 hours, like they do individuals. So they're talking like, I describe basketball like it's not even 360. Like the movements you get into are just so unique, like so unique. It's not like, it's like an American wide receiver or like running back. Like they are just unbelievable, the angles they get in. So if you're hitting that on the court for an hour a day, really intense, and then you might play pickup on top of that. I really do try and limit my kind of chaos stuff in here. I think the more
Yeah.
traditional stuff at the start of the summer is really important because I need to make sure those tissues are prepared and your muscles are strong enough, as well as your tendons, as well as your ligaments, to be able to withstand that. Because when they get in here in the summer, like they're sore from playing and
Yes.
lifting.
Yeah.
I don't want to make both. I don't want to have both stimuluses chaos, because that just is a recipe for disaster. And we've got to slow cook them so that when we get to preseason, we can do intense stuff with me in conditioning and they can still play in the court. So the conditioning level takes up a notch. And then, yeah, in season, it's like the practices are short. The lifts are very intense but short. And then the games are the highest load. So we're really trying to peak for the games, recover, peak for the games, recover for 5 months.
Mm.
You know, and so that's the main thing. And I learned early in my career, I think one time at Furman, I tried different exercises with the guys on a Monday, and we played a team on a Wednesday, which I knew we should beat, right? And we did beat them, but at halftime it was really close. And I think some of the players had mentioned at halftime, I wasn't there, maybe I was taking a leak, but they're like, Coach, we're sore. Like, we'll be all right, we're sore. And he gets on the bus to me after the game. He goes, hey, I love you. I think you're really good at what you do. Guys can't be sore in season. Like, they absolutely cannot be sore. We got a game to play. And I remember it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, I nearly contributed to us losing. And it's always stayed with me. Like, I do not need you to be sore for a game. So even if like in season training, it's stupid boring and we only have slight differences in raise trap bar, lower, if we repeat a cycle every like 3 cycles for 5 months, I don't mind. That's so fine for me. I'm so good with that because I just need your body to your muscle, because I don't need you to turn into a cross country athlete, because essentially if we don't lift and you just practice, you're going to get skinny and weak.
Yep.
You need to do the higher load stuff. And then, yeah, at certain points in the off season where I think you've got used to the practice load, we'll do the sexy stuff. And in season, if you're not playing as much, we'll have to do more of the sexy stuff to make sure you're ready. So when you do come in the game, you've hit all these high intense jumps and you've had the extensive jumps as well. We'll kind of get a balance of that, playing time, top up games for them if they don't play. But yeah, I think that's just the sport is the absolute number one. And I think if we're a strength coach and we think it's all about us in the weight room, like hopefully by now things have switched and it's not like I'm the strength coach, this is my program, you will do what I say. Like, to me, that's really dangerous on many levels, especially now with NIL and these athletes. Like, they might be with you for 10 months. If we really care about what we do, we should try and maximize that time they have with us to get the best they can for their career, for Michigan, for like to playing well for us. Like, let's do what you need to do. And if you're late and you keep being late, like that's a culture thing. If you keep wearing the wrong stuff, that's a culture thing. That's completely different to the training. The training itself should be what you need. If it's a team environment, great. We're still getting that team chemistry. But I got to get you up to speed quickly because coach is going to want to practice 100 miles an hour like that. And we have to be secondary to that and make sure you can keep playing and be practicing. The greatest capability is availability in games or practice. If they're out for one practice, it feels like a week in the coach's eyes, and it's one practice. They miss a day. Hi. So I'm always with that mindset. My first year here was about health. Can we just keep them healthy for the year, healthy? And even now I'm like, healthy, got to keep them healthy. And can we add in certain aspects of performance? But these guys are unbelievable athletes. If you keep them healthy and you get rid of tendonitis issues and you clear up some asymmetries in single leg strength, they're probably going to feel a lot better. If you lean them out, if their body composition improves. So if you're working on their health, their performance will probably improve. If you help them with recovery and education on diet, their performance will improve. So all the modalities, all the tsunami bar, all the Kaisers, all the anchors, all the aqua bags, all the just really educate them on what it takes to be a pro. And I think some NBA strength coaches and players are putting out amazing content, which again, we talked about social media, I send it to them. I got no ego in this thing. Look at Jason Tatum lifting. Look at this guy. Look at Paolo Banchero's warm-up routine, which got over 1 million views. This is elite. This is exactly what I want you to see, because you're going to learn way more from seeing an all-star do it than hearing me say it every day.
Yeah, as you were talking too, I was thinking about, especially with the chaos and like players who play more, players who play less. I was thinking about, we talk about buckets and buckets to fill. And it's like, okay, you have enough of a lot of times traditionally, and this is totally true, is like, all right, you got enough of the ground contacts and conditioning bucket just by playing a ton. You played a ton. So you got that. You probably got some of your speed bucket. Maybe you could say there's some top end speed, but for basketball versus football, it's either soccer, American or European, it's a different story. Or you could, and you have these different buckets to fill. But I don't think people talk about that variability bucket that often. like the chaos bucket. Like, all right, your sport is taking care of that movement variability pretty well. You played a lot. You had all these different, I imagine GPS and data could even give you all the change of directions and that profile. And wow, you really changed direction a ton. That was a very variable game versus maybe a more monotonous strategy. It'd be interesting to think about that. But I do think that's underappreciated. But like you said too, I think I know my mind is very susceptible for this. I would consider myself someone who enjoys the creative process a lot.
Yeah.
And I think but that's not always what someone needs. If you already got all that, and there's two heads to that coin. It's that very creative process, all the interesting, like the sexy, the nuance, lots of degrees of freedom. Those are the things that viewers, social media finds novel and interesting versus, so you have to have both sides of your brain active and they have to be aware of the other. That the simple, that, hey, sleep well, recover well, do the meat and potatoes, keep your tissues conditioned, all those basics that are quite boring. And then there is the fun on the other side. But it's interesting I guess in a way, like it's almost like the discipline and the fun and interesting there. You have to have it all at the end of the day. And you have to realize the thing that sometimes you need to put the more fun stuff to the side for the time, because that's not what you need at the moment.
You hit the nail on the head, because I feel I have so many creative outlets in my head, even the books I want to read. And this season taught me so much. I had some really important players that didn't really like the weight room. So we had to work on buying an intent and really build a relationship. But again, I've just said, I stuck to most of the similar stuff we've done in here. We didn't do much speed work in here. We did some power stuff day before a game. That was my RSI kind of day. I'd lift them before practice. Other times I'd lift them after practice. And the ability of these guys to put on the jets, to have unbelievable dunks and explosive efforts in March, was not a reflection on, we did that this week in the weight room. It was, no, we kept them healthy and they felt good going into the game. And guess what? They maybe hit a three and they started feeling confident. And they were like, man, I'm feeling it. So then boom, they were in transition. And so you're sitting there on the bench, you're like, it's such a lesson to me is, man, just keep them healthy, put them in the best situation you can, and then let them go. Right, let them just express themselves on the court, and I'm so glad that obviously that taught me a lot this year. But that to me, we talk about like that being really traditional and kind of rigid. Like the in season for me, I got to see them every day. We switched to a micro dosing approach. The first time in my career I've done that. It was coach's preference at Furman. I'd train the guys 2 times a week. I'd see the lower minute guys 4 to 6 times a week. Here it was essentially I'd see the guys 6 times a week. So I really had to kind of condense it all to very specific match day -2, match day -1, very kind of soccer mindset there, right? Match day +1, match day +2, game day -1. Like it would be, okay, let's eat, sleep, train, repeat type thing. Can I keep this stimulus where they don't get sore, where I still feel the numbers are where they need to be? And that's the eye test. Is their bench press looking like it's getting better or worse? I'll record the loads. Is there trap bar deadlift? Is there more weight they can lift from 405? If I see that, I'm so happy with that. I don't need to go 415, 425 at the risk of injury. I just need to see he's got more in the tank. I'm good with that. I'm good with that 2 days before a game. And then the summer, that's where I get really creative. Everyone's on the individual plans, the development, because I still think you can improve those qualities. They go home for 10 days in August. We come back for preseason. We tap into those qualities, but we also add that traditional piece. So we have improved. We've gone from point A, summer's point B, and preseason point C. Like we should see a steady incline in those qualities. And if they want to improve laterally, if they want to improve their single leg bounce, if they want to improve their double leg bounce, we should have worked on that in the summer with the creativity aspect, with the engagement with the player. Send me this. What did you do? What did you like? What do you don't like? That's the fun part of the summer. I love it. I love the training every day. That's like, man, this is strength coach mode. And then preseason, you talk about filling the buckets. Recovery bucket needs to be full. The mental bucket needs to be full. How's preseason going? I need to look at our GPS loads for my conditioning sessions. Normally the Friday is that big session with me and the whole team and the staff. So I need to be really aware of I want to train some lower back on that day because I know lower back training can really lead to increased soreness. They're going to have 2 days off. That's the best time for me to do posterior chain. So will we do Zercher carries? Will we do trap bar carries for that strongman session? Yes, for sure. But that's really looking at that data. So making sure we're not overflowing that cup. And then they've got the 2 days to recover. And then, like I say, in season, it's being really aware, like, man, I'm so sore after this game. Okay, let's reduce the set. I'll stretch you after this. Or like, hey, let's just give me this. Tomorrow I'll make it lighter for you. Okay, because I have to pair practice loads with what I do in here. That's why we do 30-minute session, 20-minute session, 10-minute session before game type thing. But you talk about filling those buckets and letting the game chaos. I do remember, I want to say something real quick, was I would always think in that preseason period and even early season on a Monday, they should be fresh. They've just come off an off day. So I need to hit max speed in the warm up. I want to do that. Let me hit max speed at the end of the warm up. So I know I've hit that quality for the week, and I'll get the speed gates out because I'll make it competitive. It'd be great. Valve speed gates, point guard against each other. And I remember doing it, and I had to jump in because it was uneven numbers, and I'm sprinting my ass off. And I have a wing that was doing it, and he pulled up halfway through. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh
like,
no.
No. And anyway, it was a quad that was a little bit tight, able to practice. It was fine. I was like, you dummy. You tried to overdo it. You tried to make it too sexy.
Mm-hmm.
You try to be too, like, it's great on paper. I could do that every week. I can track it. Never again. No, never done it again. I'll just do, hey guys, let's jog, stride, jog, sprint, jog, foul line, baseline. And that works for me. But that's just a lesson again, like so many lessons this first year with this team and with the microdosing and having a whole new group of athletes. But I think sometimes we can overdo it as strength coaches for the sake of wanting to show we're doing stuff. I got the speed gets out, coach. I'm not just doing the same old warm up. But I've just been, man, I was lucky it wasn't a serious injury, because I can't guarantee that they have fully rested on that Sunday. And if anything, if they've sat on their ass all day, it's the worst day to do sprinting the day after. It's probably better to do it on a Tuesday, but you live and learn, right? That's what we do.
It is. It really is like a thing where even just in day to day, you could just say anyone's job, is do the worst, the hardest, the most boring thing first. And then once you get that out of the way, then you can do the fun stuff later, or you can do the more creative tasks. Or I know sometimes people have a creative day or whatever. There's a lot of different styles, but I do believe that whatever you do first sets the tone. And I'm a big believer in, even sometimes, I shouldn't say sometimes, I program this all the time, is the first thing in the training is something boring, which is usually like a 2-minute iso lunge. It's boring. You actually have to pay the dues, the stamp. Yeah. Then you start get to doing more fun stuff. Or even I learned this from Jeremiah Flood, and it was Jay Schrader's, it was the juice warm up. I don't know if Jay called it this, but it was like you do like a long iso lunge each leg, then you do like 40 altitude drops. It's all the same thing. And then you go sprint, it's like you almost do this boring, repetitive thing and then go sprint. But I think for strength coaches, the fun stuff is it's sprinting, it's timing sprints, it's measuring jumps, it's doing explosive things that are an output. And I see that, for me, I'm going to coach track this afternoon. It's going to be loaded with those things that are just inherently fun. But if your job is primarily health and robustness, you almost have to rewire what you think about that in some regards, and I think, and I found that even, we both played tennis or coached tennis. I probably both played too.
I play a little bit. I dabble.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a little bit. I do think it's a good sport. I used to play all the time growing up, and but I used to, when I started at Cal and with tennis, I wanted to bring in more of my plyometric hat from my jumps background. So we're doing a lot more plyometrics, a lot more stuff off boxes, and no one got hurt. But I think it was just a few years in, I just realized, I don't think these guys need to do this. I just don't, they just don't need to do this. And I'm like, all right, I know it was fun for me, but I think they need something else. But to be honest, we got the fun in we played a ton of games. Whenever possible, we just played games for warm up, or did a very dynamic, flowing, a lot of crawls and chases and tennis ball stuff. And the guys loved it. And then we lift. So that was I kind of replaced my fun with the plyometrics with more very dynamic type warm up. And that was fun too. And tennis players too, they like to have fun. They more than they love to lift, although some of mine certainly did, but they like to play more than anything. So it's anyways, long story short, I do think it's, we always want to get to the fun stuff, but it is you almost have to, it's almost a universal principle. You have to check off boring. And even too, I was just thinking about, this is maybe neither here nor there and is the result of my slightly ADD brain running around, but Anna Lemke is a dopamine researcher at Stanford and talks about the brain will always restore a balance. If you sit on your phone all day, you're building up pleasure ticks, but that will reverse itself into pain at some point. There's always a wave. So you have to have some boring stuff. And I think that's the thing too. We talked about the skill players who just love to play. You have to teach them. I mentioned the point guard at my high school soccer player. At some point in your career, you have to learn a little bit of boring just to maintain tissues and all that stuff. Or maybe it's just discipline and sleep and nutrition, and that's your boring. It's gotta, something has to level in there at some point. And so it's certainly a skill that, again, just furthering that point that we need to continue to work on that.
Yeah, and I would say we lift post practice 2 days before game, 3 and 2 days before game. So they're tired, they're fatigued. I don't need them to do anything super complex, guys.
Yeah.
Barbell bench press today, chin up, dumbbell lateral raise, ab rollouts, 4 rounds. Let's rock. Let's warm up on them. Let's go. I just need a stimulus. I need a stimulus horizontal press, vertical pull. I need it. If it's a trap bar deadlift day, just make sure your form's good. Like they don't need that because sometimes we might watch film after. So it's like even more so, guys, just come in. Let's just keep it like you hear this quote all the time. And I used to, earlier in my career, I would always chase the creativity and chase the nuance and the novelty of stuff. That's probably what got me down the route of fascia training is Danny's course. Like, oh, I've heard about it. Let me learn more about it. I have that. I know I have that in me of like curiosity. So I took his course. We made another one. I did the stretching course. I feel really, really good about that. Now, I mean, I look at stuff now, breathing is something that I'm really kind of dive into.
Yeah.
I've read the oxygen advantage. I've read breathe, like you see breathe, like that's something that, man, like that could be a marginal game we have with our team. But so I'd always see simple works, boring works from coaches that are really, really good in the college basketball space would always say that. And I'd always be like, man, you're just getting old, like whatever, right? And I'm not naming names on purpose. But you're just getting lazy. And it's like, no, like that's genius. Like that is genius. Simple does work when the season is chaotic, when practice can be, they might have just lost 5 games to 7. They might have lost 5-0. So they're coming in with they're pissed. They're annoyed. They don't want to train. They might not want to train first off. So I can't make it, hey, let's work on your single leg bounce because A, you're fatigued, so your nervous system's shot. B, you don't need that bucket field. You need the traditional max strength field or relative strength field. And like, let's just keep it simple. But I do drive in the summers and I'm like, oh, I'm excited to try this with an athlete. I don't think he's ever done this reactive side lunge overhead press. I don't think he's ever done this kettlebell speed reps and chest press with a cable. Like he's going to really enjoy this, or he's going to have some creativity today. I'm going to give him the ball. He's going to have a Kaiser around his waist, shot fake drive. Whatever you want it to look like, just drive off your right leg and left leg. And I need that resistance to be high because I need you to feel force, not too heavy where you can't move and it affects the skill component of it. But you need to give me good feedback and not just make it easy. But like, you're going to get better doing this. Like you're going to feel really good in skill later today having done that. That fires me up. So there's the summer preseason again, conditioning. But I just think there's ebbs and flows of creativity and traditional stuff that I think as a coach, you have to figure out what works for you. And I think over years and experience really help that to like know yourself and know what you really like to do and know when to implement it and when to say, we're good. Like, actually, you know what? Like, I need to run it back. I have never done this in-season model before in my career other than last season. I like it. We're going to run it back. If the group is the same personality and they have the same needs, we'll run it back very similar because it was successful and we got to build from that. I can't keep reinventing the wheel every year, which sometimes we feel the tendency we need to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and I want to ask you more about some of the variability, the way your weight room is set up as well. I did want to mention too, I've thought about this before, but it's kind of resonating more as just with the boring. I think about Jay Schrader's system. If all you do is on one end is play and you have a lot of variability in play, and then the other is just isos, and it's all boring. It's like the pain pleasure balance. You have all pain on the one side. Yeah. But at the same time, like on the level of stimulation, like stimulating somebody, especially someone who loves to play. If I took a bunch of kids who just grew up just playing and everything was play and it's just all skill, and then all of a sudden it's all right, we're going to do 40 minutes of isos. You have to just like learn. You have to learn how to do that, and you have to learn how to love and embrace that.
For sure.
But to stimulate, like if we're talking stimulating those athletes, it is that having the wide open movement options and the spotlight of attention is novelty. And how can I master this? And how can my body do this? Or how can I use this as a gateway to a new skill? So I wanted to talk to you about, with the time remaining, 2 more things in particular, and hopefully I have time for a little bit more. But I did want to talk about repetition without repetition, but I think you call it every rep different, which is a way better. I think it might be one less syllable, which is great too, because that's just a long repetition without. It's just so many syllables. What? It's you would never say that to your team. I mean, you would never, but you're going to get a lot of confused looks.
Yeah.
But I want you mentioned your weight room, just like back to that dial, forceful and more tissue, just really hitting those tissues and the strength barometer on one side. I think you had mentioned like it's almost different throughout the weight room. Tell me a little bit about that setup and how that kind of messages and works with the flow of how athletes are working.
Yeah, it was actually beautiful. I mean, I didn't even think about this until maybe I was showing my first recruit around, and I said, this is the more traditional area in our weight room. dumbbells, benches, racks with the barbells, safety bars, like that's in one area. Our middle area is more machine-based, so kind of like bodybuilding, hypertrophy stuff. And then we have this beautiful open space with a raised ceiling in the back. The raised ceiling is by a hard wall, so you can do medicine ball stuff. It's by four Kaiser machines, by our plyometric boxes, by our Vipers, by our kettlebells, by our weight vests, long strip of open space. This is our more functional area. This is where we'll do the traditional stuff will be in that area, the bench press, the deadlift, to get you strong. And when you have the ability to express that force into speed and we'll work on power stuff, we'll come over here and we'll do it. This is where we get the balls out, the heavyweight balls, the regular basketballs. We use the Kaisers for speed stuff. We'll do our plyos, our bounds. And I said, this is my favorite area because this isn't Gold's Gym. This isn't Fitness First. This is a place, basketball performance center, designed to get you better. I'm looking down at 2 basketball courts. I said, everything we do in here is to help down there. That's why you come here. That's why my job is to help you be the better basketball player, not to be a better weightlifter, not to have you look like a bodybuilder, and I think it resonates with recruits. It's like, it's to make you a better basketball player. So we should probably get away from the more traditional stuff at some point. If we watch the game and it's chaos and it's speed and it's power and it's explosiveness, it's aggression, I don't think tempo bench press has real much of a transfer in their heads or in my head to that. So at some point we've got to do speed. So in the back of the weight room there, the medicine balls, and obviously some wearable resistance, which we might get on topic.
Yeah, let's talk about that too.
We're going to have fun in this space. This is an open skill. This is the creativity. But the one thing I need from you here, like if I give you freedom with these exercises, I give you the autonomy, you have to do it with intent. I'm going to get annoyed if I'm looking across the weight room and I see you do Euro step and it's half-ass.
Yeah.
That's going to annoy me. I'm not going to coach you up on the technique, but you have to do it full speed. If not, I'll go back to the more traditional stuff. It's like a little teaser. Like I can put you back on the other stuff if you want. I can have you do a regular bench press if you don't want to cable chest press with speed, but that's not quick. You want me to show you how it's done quick? Or is it on 50? Bang, bang, bang. I might knock out a set and they're like, okay. I said, I'm not trying to be a dick, but like if you want to improve this quality and work quicker, that's how you got to do it. Like, look at so-and-so, look at this athlete. How do you think this player plays it? You got to work speed, dude. So that's me kind of getting fired up in my own head there, right? But that's that open area where we really work on the specific qualities of basketball. And it's got the raised area, so they'll do a drop jump. I can throw a ball off the ceiling, regular. I can throw it off the side. Oh, yeah, you didn't expect that one, did you? Okay, yeah, we're working on a skill here now. We've done that pre-game, which I think is really cool. But it's really just, I love the weight room setup. We do need both. I do think you need both. At certain times of the year, the dial will be higher than others, depending on who you are, right? What your archetype is, what your playing position is, what your training age is, what you want to look like performance-wise, what you think your best weight is, what an assistant coach, your primary recruiter thinks you need, what your head coach thinks you need, what your agent thinks you need, what I think you need from watching your film. Obviously, the main thing is what you think you need. Put all that in. That will tell me what your program looks like. And again, like if you think about all those probably 10 points there, yeah, then there's no wonder you have 12 individual programs, right? And you've got these new players and it's fun to figure out what they like to do and don't like to do because it should look different because everyone is different. And I have the ability in my job. It's funny, I was telling this side tangent. As a GA, you start with all these teams and all these athletes and you get paid nothing, right? And then you think the better you are, the more athletes you get to impact. You think, man, you're getting paid this. You should impact so many more with your knowledge base. No, it becomes super like expertise and specific. And I now have a golf team, men's golf team, men's basketball team. That I have 30 athletes I need to be elite at. And whereas 7 years ago when I first started, I had 100. Work that one out.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's this way around. But if we have that, I can't be lazy and you make it the best you can be. Like if you really want to give them the best service.
Yeah, I like what you said. I don't necessarily like the phrase pet peeve, but I'll say an irritant of mine for a long time is watching people do like medicine ball throws and just assuming just because you're throwing it against the wall that it's somehow going to make you better. When I just saw you in your sport, like if it's a lacrosse, pass, or it's you're throwing a football or a javelin or a baseball or whatever it is. Well, when you're in your sport, you probably moved about 30% faster than that throw against the wall. So how do you think that set of 10 is really going to help you? And it's almost in the way like, and back to just because I had mentioned Jay Schrader, there's a good clip of him talking about the emotional intensity of the sport itself. And like, I think we forget about how intense the game is sometimes and just to make games out of some of those basic implements, to make a game out of a medicine ball activity. It's like, hey, look how fast you're moving and how hard you're throwing this. This is how you need to be moving for this stuff. Just because it's more degrees of freedom, it's more open chain. It's like the game, so make it like the game. I think that's a important thing that it definitely gets left by the wayside in a lot of that type of training for sure. And maybe that's why sometimes you can get a bad rap. Oh, it's not enough or forceful enough or whatever. Well, are you treating this like the game? And I could see how you were led to the wearable resistance as well, because it's like, well, that's probably about the fastest thing you can do that's very subtly loaded with maximal velocity and angular velocity and rotation and degrees of freedom. So maybe just before I forget, because I did want to ask you about the angular, the micro resistance. Tell me about how you use that. Like I think Lila or Amorpho, I think is the other company. Tell me how you're integrating that into the training of the athletes.
Yeah, to your exact point, like to me, when I first saw that product, it was an NBA draft combine. I saw the Amorpho gear and I saw like a coach, first off, that I really respect an NBA organization, be really intrigued by it. So of course I was like, well, I think he's really good. If he's intrigued by it, I should probably look into it. And it just makes so much sense. It's an absolute no-brainer to me. If we're trying to improve your basketball performance and I can put a micro load on you where you can play the sport wearing resistance, that takes the weight room to the court. And you're not even noticing it until towards the end of the workout where they're starting to feel a bit heavier. You're starting to get fatigued at no risk of injury. You're still doing the same skill workout. Boom. That is absolute money to me. And we did it my last year at Furman. I did it with my 2 redshirt athletes. I gave them Amorpho for their game day workouts. So that's like kind of wearable resistance, long tights, long leggings with the little black kind of ball things. One player would wear that, who I thought was the stronger player. Another player would either wear the vest, because I didn't think he moved as good, or the shorts, because I think he was slightly a weaker player. The other one was a freak athlete. Wear that when you play, because at the end you're going to play one-on-one. You're going to play live. So that's going to give you a great stimulus there. Hopefully by the time you take it off and you practice the next day, over time, you're going to feel like you're getting quicker, because it's the movements we're trying to improve. And then obviously with the Lila stuff, with the Exogen stuff, that was more in the weight room in the A series. So again, like if we're doing pogo jumps, it makes more sense for me to have the load. Now you could think of it, the biomechanics. I sucked at biomechanics, so this is kind of off. If I have a barbell here, the further the weight is from the actual area I'm working, you could say that works the area harder. But I also think if you wrap weight on the calf, I think that loads the Achilles and the calf complex more. So I'm going to go with that in the A series. So if we're doing, hey, I need you to do a power skip into a fake dunk, right leg and left leg. You now know you're a double leg jumper. That's why we're doing it single leg takeoff. Put this on in your A series. Pair that with maybe it's like a no rep set side lunge, like what we'll talk about, and maybe it's like a wall overcoming ISO. One of them doesn't have to be, or it's a lateral resistance on the Kaiser. Okay, after your A series, take that off, and then we'll do our traditional A series, B series, or traditional B series and C series, because that would have been the A series. If you do that over time, not necessarily every day, but on your more intensive jumps in here, and extensive, but more intensive for sure. I prefer doing it on the intensive more than them do jump rope. I think that can sometimes be a bit of overkill, especially if they're doing skill workouts. Again, that to me is like, the athlete loves it because they've never done it before. They understand the rationale, especially like I would say for more of the fascial-based athletes that have a harder buy-in to the weight room. Hey man, let's just put this weight on your calf.
For sure.
That to me, and I've evolved to be like, no, big men still need it too, because their feet might suck. They might have slow feet. So even if you do fast feet stuff, like with a 45-pound plate, they're doing straddle jumps on it. Even if you load that, they will feel quicker when you take the load off.
100%.
And the skill component, they can still get better as well. Don't just limit that to the fascial-based athletes. But that to me was something that I want to bring in to my second year here. And I'm literally going to, that's why I messaged you the other day.
Oh yeah.
I have thoughts of incoming players of like, they would have never have done this before. This is going to really impact them, and they're going to love it. They are going to love it. I know it, because it's going to be so open chain, and they're going to, wow, I feel a difference. Hell yeah, man. That's part of the weight room, dude. You feel the difference. You feel the difference on the court. Let's go. So I just think wearable resistance is something that I remember I wrote an article and I posted a couple of years ago, but it's honestly something like, other than this conversation, where I'm like, I think more people should use it. And I think more people not using it helps us. So it's just one of those, like I guess sometimes I can get an old grumpy man of like, I don't want to share anything, you know? I don't want to share that. But it's like, no, like there's such a give and take in this profession, and I have learned so much from other people. It's like, I do think there's an absolute market and area on that big circle pie chart of training that athletes should use with that. Especially if it's a shooting workout, probably less so. If it's a skill workout on the court, dude, put that on. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, cool you mentioned the A series, just because one of the things, it was actually unexpected for me, is I found using the calves for single leg like quadrant hops, which is funny because there's not a lot of angular being thrown around necessarily. But even just that has really good potentiation for like a jump thing after. And even as subtle as it is, I found for sprinting, it's like, it's not a guaranteed PR, but you're going to feel so good especially when you kind of do like if you start with like 3 100s for like the Lila and you do a sprint and then take one off, do a sprint, take one off, do a sprint, take one off. By the end, you just feel like you're absolutely flying. But I've never played basketball or done like skill work. I can only imagine doing skill work specifically with it on and then feeling that, as well as just the bridge too, for like those play-based players who are like, I don't know about the heavy lifting stuff, that as a bridge. So like, wow, it just seems like that's so versatile and effective for that, like that bridge of reaching, crossing those gaps.
One thing I would add to that is I did do force plate testing after they had done them in the A series. And I called it like the Scandinavian rebound test. And I think I might have butchered it a little bit, but that to me is one of the best force plate tests you can do with athletes, because like the shackles are off. It's very open chain. You're going to produce as much force as you can. Think 6 pogo jumps, and the 4th, 5th, and 6th one are as big as you can. Quick, as powerful. So they can use their arms and they actually feel like an athlete on the force plate. Sometimes we restrict by going hands on hips. And I would do the A series with Delilah stuff and max dunks. And I, every couple of weeks, all right, let's do the let's do CMJ, multi rebound, and then let's do the Scandinavian one. Let's see if we've improved. You bet. Green arrow up, increase 10%. So again, they feel like, wow, I feel good right now. So then my thought process goes, man, like, this is like very radical. Can I put this on some guys in a warm up for a game? If we're playing can I put it on them in the first 10 minutes of them doing a shooting workout on court in Chrysler Arena? Wow. That would be merging the gap, wouldn't it? That would be kind of radical, different. And I like that because part of me like has this thing of like, I always like trying new stuff that no one else has done. I know that about my personality, which I have to refrain, which we talked about.
Yeah, there's a balance.
Man, if balance and checks it, if I can do that with a player that has done it in the weight room in the summer, loves it, knows it impacts their performance, why don't I put those calf sleeves on them for the first 10 minutes of a skill-based warm-up pre-game? So we know we're going to get that performance improvement, but it's finding that balance. Is it going to fatigue them? Okay, that's a give and take. Is it 5 minutes? Is it going to fatigue them for their last 5 minutes of the game because we've loaded that? Is it too close to performance? But they're the kind of questions I have with wearable resistance. Is like, you can wear that in a shoot around if you wanted to. Like, what's the time? Like the residual effect, right? What is that for wearable resistance? We don't know yet. I mean, it's up to probably, I hate to say it, guys like us, probably to try and push the boundaries and see. Maybe I do it on a walk-on. Maybe I do it on a walk-on in his pre-game stuff. And then we always do force plate jumps pre-game. So maybe I do a control test. Something I'm just thinking about with that. But if it can lead to an increase in like them feeling good and the Achilles being red hot, ready to go for the game, or even at halftime, who's to say they don't wear it at halftime for a few minutes? So they feel, because that's another thing. Halftime warm-ups, I think, suck in basketball. And then you're expected to go 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, instant.
I always kind of look at the other team. I'm like, we're doing at least a little bit better than them. Like, I'm at least trying to get these guys to jog because they'll kind of be cool and then ready to play. And then we're down 7. Or like, this, there's these nuances to the game that I still really try and like dial into. But yeah, I think the activation of that stuff, I mean, wearable resistance works for sure.
Yeah. I like to, I was going to ask you, so the next question is like repetition without repetition, or every rep different. It's like, it's such an easier place.
Yeah, no,
but even with like the Lila, it's funny because I find you could get a novelty effect. You could do the same load, but just put the little fusiforms on different. And hey, you got something different today. Let's see how, and just, there's always that little, how's this, working? And just those little subtleties I think is really cool. But tell me how that dial of every rep different works for you. I know it was Michael Zwiefel. Actually, I was thinking about Michael when you were mentioning your weight room numbers versus your skill level, and Michael was like, I'm the best player on the football team, and the strength coach is getting on me because I can't do enough pull-ups or something, but I'm still the best player on the team. And but they, in their course, they talked a lot about that dial of, okay, here's a meat and potatoes workout. We're not going to do as much, variability, but then there might be a workout where they do a lot of every rep different type stuff. And how does that work in your program with that variability dial? I'm probably similar, I guess, to like the chaos bucket, but I'd be curious to hear about maybe one, what lifts and movements do you like to use it on? And how does that happen? And then how does it integrate into the program?
Yeah, I definitely like to use it on lunge-based movements. Anything with the Viper, anything with the basketball in your hand, even dumbbells where you can press it slightly differently. Think about you're standing on a 45-pound plate and you're stepping forward and back. Even with a medicine ball, I've used it medicine before. Imagine you're passing with someone, but every pass has got to look different as you hit the floor. Athletes love it. And again, that ability to tolerate variability. And even if it's the same weight, like I doubt they're doing the exact same movement, and they might be wearing different shoes that day. And also like just little nuances, right? If I was to slow freeze frame an athlete doing a skill workout on the court, like the amount of their different foot positions is just ridiculous down there. So we've got to train that up here at some point. So yeah, a lot of those lunges, Viper, I think is awesome because again, it's just so free flowing. Like, hey, I want you to jab step here, and then I want you to pivot step. Like, let's do that, jab and pivot step. However it looks, You're a different position group. You might have arms really extended for the pivot. You want to keep it tight. I'll coach you on the intent. And actually, like, you're spending too long on the floor. It's got to be quick, reactive. Like every rep different. Got to be quick. Got to be quick. It's funny. I always demo it, and the guys kind of laugh because obviously I can't shoot a ball for anything. So I was like, "Hey, step back," and I'm like, "Guys, I'm not going to demo it today, but you know what I mean, okay? Like we're going to go anywhere here on the clock face, more towards the end of the summer, really, because again, I feel like they've got strong enough, and now we can start to expose them to more of the speed aspect because we've done the strength aspect. But again, if I have athletes that I think are really elite now, then I'll put it in there, even on those autonomy days. So like if we talk about that brief, like no one likes being told what to do all the time. Like no one likes that as a husband, as a coach, like as an athlete, like no one, hey, do this at skill. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. So I program for them 4 days a week. If they come in an extra day, I'll say, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to work on? They might say, coach, you got it. I trust you. Or, hey, I like this. I saw this from this performance guy. Can we do this? Yes, for sure. And then those are the sessions where I might add in the just to kind of, wow, this is different. Because again, it's like a variable kind of quality I'm trying to train. So definitely with the lunges, I'd stay away from it with, even with like a cable chest press, high, low, like punch it. Okay. I saw a thing where you can do that, change the leg, do the other arm. Anything where it's like, think about functional equipment, definitely would be that one. And again, yeah, on those autonomy days, B series for sure. Even in the A series, if we do some barefoot stuff to warm up, I think that can be something where you do it. If it's pogo jumps, if it's jumping onto a pad for balance, if it's jumping onto a slant board, yeah, I just think that variability there. And again, I don't want, hey, you got to go right on the side of your foot. Like, come on, man. You look at KD jumping, his knee's so valgus. You mentioned LeBron, like that. That's okay. Like that's okay. We don't need to do every lunge with the foot out now. Like you're internally rotated. That's okay. If we can do some stuff that helps that, yeah. If I think it's a movement deficiency, for sure. But if you play well out there, like I've got an athlete who is going to his 5th year. His body is unbelievably built for basketball. If he played another sport, he'd probably be screwed. Unbelievably built for basketball. Cool. Let's just keep doing that. Let's keep doing that, dude. He's an unbelievable professional in and out of the weight room. So, yeah, I would say, I wouldn't, bench press is going to be a standard rep and set, but those side lunges, even a press, right? If you can do a split stance press, like, can we just work different speed, different angles? Because again, I'm trying to replicate more sport specific qualities with those movements. So let's make it feel like a step back lunge. Let's make it feel like a different finish at the rim. I've got like some coaches say that's fluff. I'm not standing on a Bosu ball with a barbell on my back, with glasses on, with one eye shut, trying to touch a tennis ball. That's fluff, and that's functional stuff that is bastardized, and that's not good. Like that, anyone could say that. But if this is functional stuff, like you could come in and be like, "Ooh, he's moving that with some speed," or like, and the weight has to be light. That's one thing I'd say. If it's a side, like I'm trying to do 10s, 15s, 20s, maybe 5s, because I want that speed. I want that quick ground contact time. If it's a range of motion side lunge, let's crank it up. Let's work max strength, relative strength on that frontal plane. Yes. If it's reaction, it's got to be quick. If it looks slow, the weight's too heavy, man. Lower the weight. Yeah. Lower the weight. Like you're still going to get some response for the court. You got to lower the weight. I got no issue saying that to them as well. No, what, lower the weight? Yeah, dude. Working speed.
Yeah, if it's functional, it should prepare you, be stimulating like sport functionally. Like that's sort of like that example, like the Bosu ball, staying on the Bosu ball with your eye closed or whatever, and the barb. Like that's just challenging, but you're not gonna step off that and feel stimulated like you could get on the court and be ready and be fast and be explosive, versus like what you said with like the lunges and the cable adaptations. That would be something, or the hops too. Like you would get done with that, especially at speed, and feel ready. Yeah. And I think maybe that's just the barometer. Is people might say this, that, or the other thing about training that's not the meat and potatoes barbell, but the question is, can you do it? And were you more ready? Were you jumping higher? Were you more prepared?
Yeah.
And I like what you mentioned too about the jumps. Like two of my staples that have stood the test of time with the variability in the hops is just like a slant board rep without rep. And then it's just a calf jump in place, but just feel different parts of your feet. Just work the outsides, work the insides, not fancy, just simple, but people like it and it works well.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I think that's cool you mentioned too, like, because I've seen it done with the barbell work. Like you could do it with the squat, you could change your stance every time, but and that I think it's fine, but it kind of go back to like what Boo said on a podcast next later. It's like my intense stuff, like the heavy lifts and the real intensive plyos or whatever it is, like the stuff that's real super stimulating and intensive is pretty simple. There's not a ton of variability, but outside of that, the real variable days, like the general strength, that's really variable. And it makes me think about that. Yeah, it's a nice way to kind of polarize it. And I'm sure and it maybe fits with the zone too, right? Like the zone in the weight room. Hey, there's the weights, the machines. This isn't very variable. It's going to work your tissues and those systems. And then, but hey, once we're going to be functional, we're going to do it. Like it's going to go. And I was thinking too about, I think it might have been Corey Schlesinger had mentioned like the perfect weight room might be weights, then a turf, then a track, like in 3 lanes of work.
Yeah.
I think it's like you're moving into more degrees of freedom and velocities, gradually. And when you're in this place, it's like, oh yeah, this is what I do here, so it's interesting to think about that.
And in season, you're very unlikely going to use the track. You might use the turf for some barefoot stuff, some like, let's say the Altis, that rudiment jump series that you talk about, calf, that jumps on different parts. If you jump more on the heel there, I tell those guys, flat foot, man, I feel like my glute is so fatigued from doing a forward and back. Great, let's do that. Like, let's get variability in your foot because everything starts with the foot. So it's like barefoot stuff, spike ball. Like I'm so big on training the barefoot in that A series before we do stuff. But any variability you can get in the foot is key. But yeah, if you've got a track, you're not using that in season unless it's a player that's a red shirt, unless it's a player that's playing 0 minutes or like a really low minute guy and he's had it's an easy walkthrough practice and that's coming up. So you did the speed session with him before. Cool. If that's at the morning of a game, that's fine. But there's just certain aspects, and I don't find it easy. It's like chapters of a book, right? You open up this chapter of a book in season, you kind of close that one. You open up this one in the off season. But yeah, to your point about variability, if they're doing anything with the bar on their back, I want it to be either a barbell jump, or I want it to be like a snap down, or like a step back lunge, whatever. I don't want them to think, oh, this is going to look different and quirky, because the barbell just doesn't work that way. Like it's not, you're like, yeah, we'll change our feet. But now I think you're trying to be I think coaches are trying to be, how can you track if they get better next week? You're going to go like, okay, it's 95 pounds, then we'll go 105. Well, then that might slow down the movement. And then you really want the movement to be quick. So like really the improvement for next week for, every rep different could be a lighter weight. Yeah. Because they're now better at it. Or it could be like, okay, now we're going to pair it with an exercise, pair here to here. It's not an improvement in load, which as a strength coach is so pre-wired into, well, their weight went up. That means they're getting stronger. Yes. For traditional stuff, yes. For every rep different, no. It's about how they look doing it, how they feel. Can they be quicker doing it? Yes. Perfect. Like, and because that's a fine motor skill. Trap bar deadlift is fine motor skill. Like, don't merge the two would be my advice.
Yeah.
And have fun experimenting with. Ask an athlete, hey, this is what we're going to do. You come up with an exercise on Wednesday that I want you to do, and it's plyometric based, or whatever you think can improve your single leg bounce. You research one, come up with one, show me. Now they have some skin in the game. They have some ownership. Then they come in, they're going to give that exercise really good intent. Or if they have a whole plan they want to do, they're going to work hard that session because they're the one that came up with it. So they're in the driver's seat. Beautiful. I can sit back and just coach them up on technique. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like just hearing that too makes me think about, I think sometimes we try to do just too much with the barbell. It's like, it's a barbell. It is inherently very simple. You lift it off the ground, you stimulate a lot of muscle fibers.
Not bending, guys.
And someone had said, I might have heard this like a year ago, like basically when a lot of motor learning and cueing was getting more popular, someone was seeing like a coach try to coach athletes saying, all right, you're going to squat. You're standing on railroad tracks and you're doing this and feeding all these analogies into the squat. And I mean, yeah, I'm sure it could be helpful, but I think that stuff gets more appropriate the more complex. The same way, like a more open chain, chaotic velocity, degrees of highs of freedom is probably like even a 10-yard dash, more appropriate to use those analogies. It's going to be more effective there. There's going to be more ground to cover or a more complex skill. I think it's this things change if we have that weight room with the racks, the turf, and the track. I think
Yeah,
as we move, that's just a skill in of itself to understand how things change as we move from one to the other, the mentality, the discipline, the velocity. So it just got me thinking about that too when you were saying that. I just think it's valuable to be able to cross that
for
spectrum and
sure.
understand what each has to offer.
And one thing I would add to that is like athletes are very intuitive and they know a lot of what's going on, probably more than we think. So if I suddenly start to do barbell stuff that's really like, I've used the words a lot, like if it's really sexy and like, and I start filming it, right, to post or just to, all right, what's this guy doing? Like, is this really helping me? They're going to have that inherently in their head if you keep coming up with new novel stuff for like traditional things that they've never done before. If it's with a trap bar, a barbell, a chin up thing, like, all right, this is a bit of a fad. Like, why is he filming this? Whereas if it's stuff where it's like medicine work and it's free movement and you can see they're off balance with it, like progressing from every rep different on the side lunge to make it a side lunge to a forward lunge or a clock lunge.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the clock, everyone different, boom, 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 and you're off balance. Yeah, hey, now you're working. Now you have that more kind of, I would call it the more fascial based training, the more movement based. Every part of your body is engaged in that movement. And that's something, again, that I think separates the closed chain bench press to an open chain, more full body movement exercise, unorthodox, functional cable chest press. Because I can use the Kaiser and I can overload the eccentric. I can kind of give you a little nudge. Hey, change arms real quick. Oh, wow, this is different. This feels, yeah, man. And then now when you go on the court, like, and you're driving to the room, you get a little bump. Like, I'm not going to go, hey guys, that was me. I did. But like you see that and you're like, they're moving better. They feel stronger. Like if you freeze frame any picture of a basketball guy playing, I took a picture of a screenshot of Kawhi Leonard driving the other day. I mean, the angles are crazy. Crazy. If I put that, I've used the TVs a lot this year than I ever have. If I put the TVs up of that, hey guys, we're doing no rep set for this. And we're doing a side leaning landmine side lunge for this. Look at your angle. Look at your ankle here. Like, that's why we're doing it. Boom, money.
Yeah.
And like then you let them free with that stuff and have that freedom to use it. And so I think really just keeping the traditional for what it is, that simple works 100%. They're going to just think you're a bit of a like, you're trying to like reinvent the wheel by doing this. Whereas if it's with a basketball in their hand or other stuff and they've never done it before, man, talk about improvement. They're going to love it.
Yeah. I think that's where more reinvention of the wheel is. That's where the open area is much more than.
That's where the curiosity can be.
Exactly.
Where, hey, let it fly. Input from the athlete, let it go, man. Try something else. And I've done it where, sometimes it doesn't really work. And you're like, like that. Actually, no, let me demo it again. I got the wrong hand. My bad. Try this one. Okay, cool. That makes sense, coach. I'm like, coach, this feels a bit weird. Can I do it this way? Yeah, I'm fine with that. Whatever you feel is better. Whatever you feel your movement would be like on the court. If I said, do a lateral shuffle, like coach, I actually cross over my steps more in a game. Do it. Just bump that thing up. Do it with speed. Do it. So it's more open for the athlete, and it sounds really cliche. It should probably be more open for us as well to coach because there is a gray area with it. But then you'll strike gold. You'll strike some gold on stuff where an athlete does it. They haven't watched the demo. They do it slightly different. You're like, you just made that better. Wow. That was big time. Cool, guys. We're doing it like this now. That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. There's so many good things to, especially just too, like just the weight room variable and the differences and how we can explore that variable world. Tools to do it. There's so many really cool concepts, and it was great. I'd love to get to stretching, but I feel like there'll be another can to open, so we might have to save that. I know you're certified in that. I was like, I really want to get to that question, but I think that's all we've got time for this show. But thank you so much, Matt. I know you and the fascial course. You mentioned Danny and the fascial course. Is there anything you want to mention about that, or any projects you're working on, or anything you want to talk about before we push the stop on our record today?
Right. I appreciate that, Joel. Danny and I did a Fascial Mechanics course, which got released, I guess, a year and a half ago now. Danny is just an absolute beast. He's doing some really good stuff with Stu and Altis. He is an absolute guru when it comes to this side of things. I've learned so much from that guy. So if you're interested in any stuff like that, obviously, I think the link is on my Instagram. But yeah, I just encourage coaches, like traditional works, but like explore stuff that you think can actually matter to the game and learn from other sports. I've learned so much from other sports, myself being a soccer athlete, tennis. I think just be really open-minded to it. Try it out yourself as an athlete as well. I think that's important. And kind of know what you think these athletes need, but buy-in and intent are key. But Joel, thanks for having me on, man. I've really enjoyed this chat, and I think a lot of the stuff you put out is big time, and I love seeing it on social media. So really appreciate it. I don't take it for granted. I appreciate having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. It was great talking to you today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. It was great having you here. And a reminder, if you want that 25% off Lila Exogen wearable resistance gear, you can use the code JustFly25 at lilateam.com. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next week.